So part of grounding our voice and our storytelling and our leadership into safety and community is having the sovereign discernment over where our stories flow. Yes, Jasmine, freedom and feeling of being held. Yes, I love that verb. You are held. Actually, I'll just pause here and share, even for me as I teach, there's probably like moments of tension that can arise as I prepare a class like this, as I prepare I taught in the classroom for over 12 years. I can't remember exactly now. And no matter how many years I taught, there'd always be that sort of first day of class jitters, or that you feel it buzzing in your body, right? Somatically. Oh my goodness, I'm meeting my new students. Are they going to like me? Is my class going to go well? Do I really know what I'm even talking about? Sometimes it feels like we don't graduate from those imposter thoughts. But for me, this practice has shortened the window of when I have that somatic experience of what might feel like jitters or nerves. I have something else to reach for. I have something else that holds me. So even this morning, my time of prayer before holding this class, I was just connected with who I am, the wishes that my ancestors bestowed on me when I came to earth in this lifetime, reminding me that I don't have to be perfect. I just have to be open, right? That I'm here as a channel, and that's a generous action, to be here as an imperfect, vulnerable channel to say, wow, I've learned so many beautiful things. I've experienced so many things from which I draw hope and I draw power, and I've experienced power, and I've been able to hear my voice generate power in situations and in institutions and in circumstances that want to limit me and strip me of my power. These things call me to share and to be generous. And when I ground myself into that knowing of myself and my position and my role, none of the other things matter, right? So what if somebody doesn't like me? So what if they get a little bored? They're having their own experience and they're free to have that. So this is what I am inviting you into, these practices of how can we make our storytelling gentler for ourselves, but also more powerful. So this model that I'm going to show you now, again, if you have either taken one of my previous classes or seen my book, you're familiar with this, but I feel like it's just such a beautiful, powerful visual representation of this process that I want us all to integrate even deeper. And you might already be practicing a form of this intuitively, or you might learned it somewhere else. But this is how I've sort of come to understand my most sovereign decision-making around how I speak and how I share. And I start to imagine myself as occupying the very center of these rings of relationship, right? And so the very most inner ring is my sacred space, where I am in relationship with my past, my present, and my future versions of myself. And there's so much dialogue that just happens with all the different versions of me, my younger self, my elder self, who I'm making decisions for now so that I can care for her in my future, right? And in that sacred space, I also have my inner voice, my teacher. In Chinese, we call Shen, right? Our higher knowing. And also I invite dialogue in with my ancestors, those who I love, who've crossed over, who still care for me and guide me from other dimensions, as well as spirit, God, or the universe, however you name your connection to something bigger than you, something spiritual that guides you. And then if I imagine beyond this sacred space, I start to think of my inner circle, the relationships that I have been blessed with in this lifetime, who are my most trusted and safest people, my most intimate relationships. And here I want to invite us all to really replace greed with gratitude. Sometimes we think, or maybe we, see other people's lives online and think, oh my gosh, they have so many friends and so many people that they can count on. One of my elders and mentors who I respect so much always reminds me, Joey, if you have one or two or three, you have more than most. So if you're feeling under-resourced in an inner circle space or a community space, maybe go back to your sacred space and have those conversations with whoever you commune with in your inner circle, and reach for gratitude and really consider, who is my one or two? And maybe you're in a season of your life where you need to ask for that person to appear. And I have stories I can tell you where in every phase of my life, whenever I've needed a reliable, trustworthy person, they have arrived for me in that time. And this is not a person necessarily that stays with me in every single chapter of my life. We also have to let people come and go with freedom, right? But if you have one or two that you can trust in your inner circle, you're full. Okay, so let's start practicing feeling into that abundance. And then beyond our inner circle, who are our communities? And this actually is in many different layers, right? So you can start to imagine, you probably have communities that are closer to you, maybe your neighborhood, your neighbors, your family, extended family communities. If you are a teacher like me in some capacity or other, maybe you have communities of your students or clients. Maybe you are a student in various communities, and so your mentors are part of your communities, your friends, your former classmates, your current classmates, your colleagues, right? In these communities, what forms the communities is a shared space, a shared sort of activity or agenda, a shared goal, and then reciprocity is established and being worked towards among all the members of the communities, or should be, in order to have healthier communities, okay? So for a lot of us, these first three circles are our whole world. And really, we could live a very full human life just in these spaces. But if you're here, a good chance is that you are being called and pulled and pushed into expanding your sense of self and your relationships with spaces outside of you into 4 and 5, into having a relationship with an audience, and then even being made accessible to the general public, okay? And I differentiate these two. And here's how I differentiate it. So for those of you who are already practicing sharing your voice or showing up to an audience, maybe you have a social media account, maybe you've already started gathering an email list, right? So you have people who are getting to know you through your pictures, your words, your videos, things that you create and share for people to see and interact with on a regular basis. Okay, and I said loyal audience. These are the people who chose to follow you, who chose to check in, click on your stories, right? Open up your emails. They're already interested in you. You might not know them as well as they know you from what you share with them, but you have some form of relationship happening there, of connection happening there. And then the general public are people who don't know your name, or they just found out. They might be coming across your work for the first time, and they're really interacting with you on that level of first impressions. And as a sovereign storyteller, we get to be really intentional about how the public comes to discover us, no matter which portal they come to discover us on. And I think that for many of us, your feelings of lack of safety or fear about sharing yourself is really thinking all the way to number 5 and thinking, oh my gosh, what if somebody who's never met me yet finds me and then thinks this about me, right? Am I onto something, or am I like totally off the left field? Or is this feeling, yeah, I'm getting a few little nods here. Okay. And so I really want to invite you into this model that very few people are going to actually see you in that way. And by the time you get to being accessible to the general public, you are going to have stretched your muscles and so intentionally crafted what you share and what you give, that when folks, many of you came and found me from that portal at the very beginning, right? But you have set the intention of how you want to invite people, just like we started this class. How are you inviting people into your space, into that awareness of you? Okay. All right, so how we really guide our discernment through this is asking these beautiful 6 questions that you probably remember from your English high school class or your elementary school: who, what, where, when, why, and how, and thinking specifically about story. These questions are so simple, but I cannot tell you how much power I draw from them every single time. Who is this story meant for? And if I'm thinking about who I want to share a story with, I can also think about what story, lesson, message is meant to be told to them. What do they need? What do I want to experience in sharing with them, right? Thinking about when. When do I have enough time where I won't be rushed? When do they have enough time? When are they ready to receive it, right? When is the right place and time? Where? Where is this story meant to be shared? Is it meant to be shared? I have some stories that I will only share in person or in spaces of 2 or 3, where I'll only share in classes like this. I won't share online. Sometimes I make those decisions of where to share just to remind myself how much power I have over my sharing, just to be in relationship with my own power and my own sovereignty, for no other reason than just to exercise creative license. Okay. And then also why? What's the purpose? Why is this story being shared? What is it? Once a story is shared, it has a life outside of us. We put it into the world and it lives on. What intentions do we want to birth that story with? And then how? This is where we really get to exercise our creativity, our artistry, our genius. Do I want this to be funny? Do I want this to be solemn? Do I want this to be a video? Do I want this to be a carousel? Do I want this to have images? This is where we get to have fun. And again, another space for us to tap into our power, because we have so many choices. We have so many options. This is the last part of the sacred story flow model. These are some examples of types of stories that I might choose. And I invite you all to consider how you would let your stories flow. But this is how I might choose to, or where I might choose for each of these stories to live for some time in my different circles. So in my sacred space, this is where I really safeguard and keep and tend to my tender, unhealed, unclear stories. For the sacred space, this is one of the ways that I create safety for myself. And I plan to not allow others to disappoint me with stories that are the most tender. I don't know if this resonates with you, but how many times have you just been so raw and so hurting, and you've gone to someone and you've shared something and they don't know how to hold that story for you, and they're not able to be the best audience for you. And in those moments, even if it was just in, our inner circle or our communities, those moments then play out when we try to show up and be a leader and use our voice in higher risk, right? Higher pressure environments. We have that muscle memory of, wow, when I'm feeling vulnerable and anxious and I go to open my mouth and speak, my audience is not going to receive me in a way that feels good for me. And I'm going to choose to shrink back instead of do this again, right? So this is why it's so important for me that I really tend to my most tender and unclear stories, unhealed stories, where in the space where I get to be my own best audience. And this is a practice, okay? This is a practice that I have to root into. And I have spiritual conversations, right? Resourcing myself there. When I do come to my inner circle, including with my partner, who's a wonderful person who's here supporting me right now. But even in my closest relationships, right? I choose to bring stories that maybe they're not perfect and maybe they're not polished at all. And I come because I'm trying to work it out in dialogue with those who I trust, right? I'm co-constructing stories that deepen intimacy, but I haven't bypassed that dialogue that I had with myself. And that's a resource to me, even as I go to be in relationship with other people. Okay. Does this make sense? Okay. And then when I come to my communities, especially the ones that I'm teaching or leading or guiding, these are the stories. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh my goodness. These didn't get updated. This from the previous slide. Okay, so I'll give some examples, but in your workbook, you should see this on the page. But the one to my communities is one that I already know the lesson, and I already know the who, what, where, when, how, why that I'm sharing with them. But I might be sharing with them something that's a little bit more intimate than what I want to share with my loyal audience, because I'm already in that relationship of reciprocity. Okay. With my loyal audiences, this is a story that I've already almost tested within my communities. I've gotten feedback that it was really helpful in my communities. And now I want to expand and allow that story to reach and impact and help more and more people. Okay. And then finally, the public. These are my safest stories. These are my most polished and refined stories. These are the stories where I've really layered like an artist. I've layered and taken the time to put exactly how I want that story to live, its flavor, its expression, its beauty, right? Its humanity out into the world, so that anybody, no matter who they are, how they relate to me, they're coming to me on my terms, how I want to be seen. Okay.